Conservatives are raging over a controversial bill that has passed the House of Representatives that they believe will ban passages of the Bible. Now, this is the Antisemitism Awareness Act, and it's a pretty crappy piece of legislation. So I'm going to go through the details here of why progressives don't like it, and then we're going to get into why right-wing nuts don't like it. Okay. Now, the bill's text states that it would require the Education Department to take into consideration the definition of anti-Semitism as part of the department's assessment on whether the practice was motivated by anti-Semitic intent when investigating allegedly anti-Semitic discrimination at colleges. So now you might think, well yeah, there's anti-Semitism, we got to crack down on it. Totally understand that. The problem is the definition. Now, the bill defines anti-Semitism as essentially any criticism of the country of Israel itself and conflates that criticism with hatred of Jewish people, which is incorrect. So now the bill specifically uses the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance working definition of anti-Semitism, which is defined as a certain perception of Jews, which may be expressed as hatred of Jews, through both words and actions. The IHRA developed the definition to help guide and evaluate research and law enforcement data before being used to educate the public about the Holocaust and anti-Semitism. So once again, teaching people about the Holocaust and fighting anti-Semitism are good things. Anti-Semitism is obviously bad. We don't want that. However, this bill is not a good way to do it. It's not the way to combat it. And in reality, that's not the purpose of the bill. Now, progressives voted against the bill because of those reasons, as well as the fact that it also infringes upon freedom of speech, the First Amendment. In fact, Kenneth Stern, lead drafter of the IHRA definition, warned that, quote, right-wing Jews are weaponizing it to effectively impose speech codes on college campuses. Well, now, why would they do that? Well, to defend the actions of the right-wing Israeli government, Benjamin Netanyahu. And so that's what's happening right now. Now, the IHRA definition also basically labels progressive Jews as self-hating and also incorrectly suggests that all Jewish people, regardless of their political beliefs, are supportive of the Israeli state and complicit in its occupation of Palestine and other human rights violations just by the virtue of identifying as Jewish. Now, obviously, that is not the case. There's a lot of progressive Jewish people that are part of these campus protests. This bill is shutting down their voices and telling them that they are anti-Semitic. Now, the other issue with the working definition is that, according to critics, it forces people to accept the legitimacy of a settler colonial apartheid state engaged in illegal occupation and a plausibly genocidal war on Gaza. So that is why the left did not vote for it. In fact, 70 Democrats, progressive Democrats, voted no. That included Jewish Democrats like Representative Sarah Jacobs of California, who said that anti-Zionism is not inherently anti-Semitism, and that the measure that passed through the House would stifle free speech rights and not do anything to fight against anti-Semitism. So that's the context for the left. The right, they had a different concern. What was their concern? The Bible. Because, of course, some conservatives took issue with the bill over the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, including claims of Jews killing Jesus or blood libel, arguing that it could mean that parts of the Bible would now become illegal. The Bible! Did the House of Representatives just make parts of the Bible illegal? Tweeted Charlie Kirk on Wednesday night. Yeah. Carlson replied Thursday morning, yes! The New Testament, and I mean Tucker Carlson. Representative Eli Crane then took that and went after Representative Mike Johnson, saying that, quote, worst part is that 4 of us went to the Speaker's office hours before the vote, asking him to fix this, Crane wrote in a message shared by Representative Matt Gaetz. He told us he would, but then brought it to the floor as is. Gaetz later posted, the gospel itself would meet the definition of anti-Semitism under the terms of this bill. Of course, their number one concern is, oh, but wait a minute, my religion, my book. You're going to outlaw the Bible. Well, no, that's actually not what this does. But it does crush free speech and expression. Now, Lauren Witzke added, this is a former Republican Senate candidate in Delaware. Congress votes to make the Bible a legal hate speech. I guess I'll see you all in jail. Yeah, no, look, the bill itself seems pretty unconstitutional. Then, of course, you have Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, who probably has one of the more unhinged, as usual, responses to this. First, she says, anti-Semitism is wrong, but I will not be voting for the Antisemitism Awareness Act of 2023 today that could convict Christians of anti-Semitism for believing the gospel that says that Jesus was handed over to Herod to be crucified by the Jews. They're not convicting Christians. Of course, it always has to be about them, right? Now, in another post, Greene, ironically, is going to use actual anti-Semitism because, of course, right? Here's what she said in another post. Since George Soros is Jewish and funds the radical left, including the pro-Hamas protests breaking out on college campuses, thanks to Mike Lawler's new anti-Semitism bill, college kids who speak out against Soros could be convicted of being anti-Semitic. I can't even. I mean, what do you say to this outright insanity? Once again, I'm just waiting for her to bring back
Jewish space lasers.
Oh, right, she already has. Talking about wanting Jewish space lasers on the border because she thinks that they're real and that they exist. Look, she can't help herself. She's an idiot. That said, look, obviously we have to fight against anti-Semitism, but this is not how you do it. And look, this bill was brought forward by a Republican, and the whole point of it was to police speech on college campuses that is against the right-wing government of Israel and what they're doing. So now, protesting the right-wing Israeli government over what they're doing is not anti-Semitism. That's having a policy difference with a governmental body, and one that isn't even ours. And yet, here we have our government that is trying to crush that dissent. That's insanity. And I'm not saying that anti-Semitism doesn't exist and isn't a problem. Don't come away with that, right? And I'm not even saying there hasn't been instances of that during some of these protests. I mean, something that concerns me quite a bit is this leading to anti-Semitic conspiracy theories on the left. That would be a terrible thing. By and large, though, what these students are doing is not anti-Semitism. They're not anti-Semitic. They're not pro-Hamas. Okay, what they're doing is that they're protesting against what the Israeli government is doing in Gaza. Calling them anti-Semitic is a smear job. And there's data to back this up. The Chicago Project on Security and Threats, CPOST, recently published something called the Understanding Campus Fears After October 7 and How to Reduce Them. Okay? This is how to protect Jewish students on campus, all right, against anti-Semitism. So what they found is they looked at Islamophobia as well as anti-Semitism. And the study found that college students are less Islamophobic than the general population. And they're also not anti-Semitic. So because they're less Islamophobic, it doesn't make them more anti-Semitic. In fact, CPOST's study found that the level of student bias against Jews is actually the same as their bias against Muslims, but no greater. So, of course, there's a bias there among some students, just like what is reflected in the greater society. There is bias against Jews and there is bias against Muslims. They found that it's no greater. And Islam, it's just that they're less Islamophobic. And in fact, The authors also found that while college students are not more anti-Semitic than the general population, they are more anti-Zionist, which is not the same. They found that prejudicial anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are largely separate phenomena with an overwhelming absence of any overlap between anti-Semitism and a negative view of Israel. So, simply put, having a negative view of Israel does not mean that you have a negative view of Jewish people, because everyone who's smart enough to know knows that they're both not the same. All right? They're just not the same. Israel does not represent all Jewish people. Okay? Jewish people are not all part of Israel or have a dual loyalty, which is another anti-Semitic trope. No. So now, what to do about it? Well, it's not this bill. Okay? It's not criminalizing or free speech. Okay? No, what it is that their recommendations for easing the campus fears of both Muslim students as well as Jewish students is to have clear and immediate communication by college leaders that condemns violence and intimidation by students and against students on their campuses. It's basically to come out and have clear instruction of this is what's anti-Semitic, this is what's it's Islamophobic. Don't do it. That's it. This is what this is. What you don't do is what colleges have been doing, which is to call on the cops to bust people's heads and then having Congress come in to crush free speech. That is not what you do. It doesn't do anything to help stop anti-Semitism. And actually, by all logic, it might actually make the problem worse. So, of course, Republicans not at all concerned about any of those factors. And look, there are some that have said, hey, this is against free speech, and great for them for actually pointing that out and for once being on the right side. But for the most part, you have a lot of these right-wingers that are mad about this simply for selfish reasons.